Welcome to the Random Access Mayhem Router Guide. I'll be going over the router's toolkit and upgrades as you train to single-handedly sort mail better than the rest of them, but also hopefully get a lot of fitness along the way. Watch as you go from this to this. While this video is primarily aimed at helping players new to RAM, I'm sure the advice will be useful for all players. Whether you only swap into router because you like to live and die fast, or you already know that the mail sorting minigame is the best part of RAM, I hope you will learn something new or helpful for your runs. Lastly, keep in mind that RAM is a very difficult game, especially when starting out for the first time. I highly recommend trying out all the tutorials to get a hang of all the different bot types yourself. Now, without further ado, please enjoy. Router is an archetypical glass cannon. With the lowest mass and hit points out of all of the bots, a stray bullet can easily deplete its health bar or knock it around the room. In exchange, Router has the highest base movement speed out of the playable bots, which is paired with a low base acceleration. This leads to Router's movement feeling slippery, but the high maximum movement speed can be used to great benefit. Router's primary attack is the grenade throw, with the grenade's trajectory dependent on the velocity of the router and the location of the cursor. The grenade maintains the router's momentum when thrown, so a high movement speed allows Router to throw grenades large distances, but requires some mental math to calculate the proper trajectory, especially against moving targets. The grenade deals damage in two parts, the impact of the grenade and the explosion. The impact of the grenade damages and briefly stuns a hit target, with the damage and stun being proportional to the velocity of the grenade. After a short while, the grenade then explodes in a small radius that deals a moderate amount of damage. Like other explosions, it can also deflect projectiles, although it is not the best method of getting deflection kills by any means. Despite being a grenade, the impact damage can be significantly greater than the explosion damage, especially with a high velocity, so I generally recommend prioritizing the high impact damage. The stun can also be utilized against high HP enemies like deadlifts or aphids to allow for the explosion damage to finish them off. Throwing a grenade also results in a small amount of recoil on the router itself, which can be used to quickly accelerate, to course correct while moving at high speeds, or to change directions while moving. While the base recoil is not that significant, Router's high speed and low hit points means it benefits significantly from making use of all of its movement options. Speaking of movement options, Router's special move is the Drift, which functions like a chargeable dash. The dash can be used to accelerate quickly, even to a temporarily greater speed than normal movement allows. When paired with the grenade, the impact damage can easily become very large compared to normal. The dash will be executed in the direction you are moving. For example, if you're holding the right direction key, the dash will put all of your velocity to the right. If you're not holding any movement keys, then you will instead dash directly towards the cursor, which can be used to get more precise grenade throws after a dash, especially on keyboard because you can only move in 8 directions. Dashing also gives the Router a brief period of intangibility after performing the dash, with the duration being proportional to the length of the charge. This is one of the most reliable ways to dodge attacks in the game, which Router especially appreciates due to its low hit points. Lastly, dashing will also create a small damaging hitbox behind the Router. It doesn't deal much damage, but it deflects projectiles, including your own grenades. This can be used to greatly increase the impact damage of grenades, as the deflected grenades gain a greatly increased velocity from the backfire. Killing an enemy in this way even awards a hot potato trick shot. Overall, Router can deal very high single-target damage while thinning out groups of enemies with explosions. Despite having very low hit points, Router's movement options and dash give it great survivability. It tends to struggle when fighting highly mobile enemies, like other Routers, and it tends to be a very all-or-nothing host, as missing the impact damage results in very little overall damage. Router has 13 total upgrades to choose from, ranging from tossing multiple grenades at once, sacrificing explosive damage for piercing projectiles, or turning the Router itself into a wrecking ball. We'll first go through all the common upgrades, then later go through the rarer ones. Careful Packing is a common upgrade that can stack up to 5 times, focusing on improving the explosion damage. Each stack increases the damage of grenade explosions by 10% and the size of the explosion by 20%, at the cost of a tenth of a second longer delay before the grenade explodes. With multiple stacks of this upgrade, grenades can quickly start dealing high amounts of damage in large areas, making Router particularly effective at killing many enemies at once. This upgrade, especially paired with some of the rarer upgrades, allows Router to focus heavily on the explosion damage of grenades rather than the impact damage. There is also a section of this upgrade that explains its synergy with shaped charges, which I'll get to later when we get to that upgrade. However, as a general rule, if an upgrade seems like it would have no effect when paired with another upgrade, there's probably some hidden synergy that the game does not directly say, where the upgrades are normally mutually exclusive. It just happens to be that, in this case, the devs decided to directly state the effect of careful packing's synergy with shaped charges, probably because that particular effect is not as obvious. Moving on to Express Delivery, a common upgrade that stacks up to 10 times. For each stack, the base speed of thrown grenades increases by 15%, while the recoil from throwing grenades increases by 30%. If careful packing is the upgrade for improving explosion damage, this is the upgrade for improving impact damage, as the higher throw speed of grenades directly contributes to more impact damage. While the increased recoil may seem like a downside, and it certainly can be disruptive, it can also be useful for reaching high speeds. With enough stacks, it can be faster to simply throw grenades behind you rather than dashing to accelerate. Generally, if you want to focus on impact damage, several stacks of this upgrade are useful, but can quickly become unwieldy. On explosion damage builds, a stack or two can still be useful for the improved mobility and acceleration. Next is Predictive Suspension, a common upgrade that increases the base acceleration of the router by 30%, stacking up to 4 times. Higher acceleration means it is much easier to control the movement of the router, resulting in less slippery movement overall, which can help with changing directions or quick movement adjustments, especially when attempting to use the grenade impact damage. This upgrade is best used to have more precise control over your movement as a router, as Router has other ways of quickly reaching maximum speed, like dashing or using grenade recoil. Preheated Tires is a common upgrade that improves the efficiency of the dash, stacking up to 5 times. Each stack reduces the charge time of the dash by 0.12 seconds. It reduces the cooldown of the dash by 7%. It doesn't say this directly, but it also increases the backfire damage by 12% as well. This upgrade allows you to reach higher speed dashes quicker with the reduced charge time, as well as letting you perform those dashes more often. I don't have much to say about this upgrade, it's just a nice mobility buff that fits in with other upgrades. The last common upgrade is Voltage Ramp Bypass, a movement speed increase that stacks up to 5 times. Each stack increases movement speed by 15%, but also decreases acceleration by 10%. This has obvious synergy with Predictive Suspension, as the reduced acceleration is eliminated by that upgrade. Unlike other hosts, Router benefits significantly from a basic movement speed increase due to its primary source of damage being dependent on its velocity. As such, this is a very good common upgrade, and the reduced acceleration is fairly easy to mitigate. Now we'll move on to the radical upgrades, starting with Bulk Delivery. Stacking up to 2 times, each stack causes the router to throw an additional grenade at the cost of grenade impact damage and throw speed. Both of these downsides pair together to nearly completely neuter the router's ability to deal impact damage, so this upgrade works best when paired with careful packing to increase the explosion damage. On its own, it is still possible to deal decent impact damage, and the greater number of explosions help to recover any lost damage. However, there is a small amount of variance in where the grenades are thrown. This, paired with the lower throw speed, means the impact damage is best utilized against very close enemies. While this upgrade may seem to be more nerfs than buffs, throwing more grenades can allow for tons of large, high-damage explosions when paired with careful packing. I would generally avoid this upgrade if you already are focusing more on an impact damage build, but it is almost a necessary component of explosion damage builds. Next is Flow State, a radical upgrade that works very well on impact damage builds. With Flow State, hitting an enemy with the impact of a grenade will cause your next grenade to have a redder color, increasing the impact damage. More consecutive hits can increase this damage further, up to double the normal damage. And the damage boost decays over time when not getting impact damage. This is a fairly simple damage boost for impact damage builds, however it gives no benefit if you can't get direct hits consistently, so beginners may struggle a little with this upgrade. A large damage bonus from this upgrade can allow grenade impacts to easily one-shot enemies with only a small amount of speed required, which may be easier to perform than always attacking out of a dash or needing to maintain high movement speed. The next radical upgrade is one of my personal favorites, Self-Preservation Override. SPO turns the router itself into a hitbox, allowing the router to collide with enemies to deal velocity-based damage to both enemies and itself. This upgrade may seem counterintuitive, as router's low hit points means it would quickly eliminate itself in the process of ramming enemies. But killing an enemy with SPO will nullify any self-inflicted damage from the upgrade while awarding the bodied Trickshot, a small fitness bonus for putting yourself at risk. With high speeds, especially with upgrades like Voltage Ramp Bypass, or while using the increased speed from the dash or the grenade recoil paired with Express Delivery, SPO can easily one-shot enemies in standard encounters to farm body trickshots. The main downside of SPO is that the self-inflicted damage is sometimes unavoidable. When surrounded by large groups of enemies or fighting enemies with large amounts of hit points, like bosses, and even sometimes fitness jammers, SPO can be more of a detriment and an easy way to get yourself killed. SPO generally works best when used in an impact damage build, as you already want upgrades that let you move quickly, and SPO gives you another source of velocity damage. Alternatively, you can go all in with SPO and just focus on the collision damage. One benefit of this strategy is that it pairs well with many of Router's common upgrades, so it is very cheap to upgrade in the shop. That being said, this upgrade is very fun to use and I highly recommend it, even with its downsides. Although that may be my own bias sneaking its way into the script. The last radical upgrade for Router is Unsecured Cargo. With this upgrade, taking damage or performing a fully charged dash will drop a grenade directly beneath the router with a 1-second cooldown, exploding after a short time like normal. This upgrade isn't too incredible on its own, as it generally takes too long for the upgrade to explode to reliably damage enemies that aren't stunned. That being said, careful packing can be used to increase the size of the dropped grenades as normal. This upgrade also pairs decently well with Self-Preservation Override, as it allows you to follow up collisions with explosions. Overall, not a bad upgrade, but there are generally better options, and I would only really consider it if I already had careful packing. Now onto the last tier of upgrades, the breakthroughs, beginning with Perforated Envelope. Stacking up to 3 times, each stack causes grenades to fragment into 3 additional smaller grenades after impacting an enemy, floor, or wall. Each fragmented grenade deals less damage and has a smaller explosion radius, but when multiple explosions connect, it adds up to more overall damage. This upgrade is best used in explosive damage builds paired with careful packing and bulk delivery. Careful packing helps to make up for the smaller damage and explosion size, and bulk delivery directly multiplies the amount of grenades thrown. Additionally, Perforated Envelope does cause the grenades dropped by Unsecured Cargo to fragment as well, making these upgrades a nice combo. However, the upgrade leaves quite a bit to be desired on its own. The grenades tend to fragment in such a way that hitting an enemy with the impact of the grenade results in the explosions missing. Therefore, you often need to throw the grenade above the enemy in order to benefit from the higher overall explosion damage, sacrificing the impact damage in the process. Overall, Perforated Envelope is a strong upgrade in explosion damage builds where its effects are multiplied when used in conjunction with careful packing and bulk delivery to allow for massive area damage. I generally would not consider this upgrade on its own, but if you want to improve Router's explosion damage, there are worse ways to start. The next breakthrough upgrade is Shaped Charges. This upgrade increases the impact damage of grenades by a whopping 50% and allows them to pierce enemies, at the cost of no longer being able to explode. Of course, since the grenades can't explode anymore, it doesn't really make sense to continue calling them grenades, but whatever. This upgrade has obvious synergy for impact damage builds. A 50% increase to impact damage significantly reduces the amount of velocity required to kill enemies. Additionally, the piercing projectile can be used to get skewered Trickshots, which is a significant fitness multiplier and makes this upgrade worth taking on its own. It should be noted, however, that the lack of explosions means you will be required to kill enemies with direct hits, which may be more difficult for beginners who are not as used to the grenade trajectory. Shaped Charges has a lot of important synergies with other upgrades, some good and some bad. Shaped Charges works well with any upgrade that improves impact damage, such as Express Delivery and Flow State, and upgrades that improve the router's movement speed. Because careful packing normally improves the grenade explosion, it has a unique effect when paired with Shaped Charges, instead decreasing the projectile speed lost after piercing an enemy, making it much easier to get skewered Trickshots. Additionally, it should be noted that when paired with Unsecured Cargo, The grenade dropped from taking damage or dashing retains the normal explosion, so there is no anti-synergy with this upgrade. When paired with Perforated Envelope, Shape Charges projectiles will fragment in an arc after the initial point of impact. Not a bad synergy, but the issue with Perforated Envelope and Shape Charges is simply the fact that Shape Charges tends to work better with Spin Control, which is mutually exclusive with Perforated Envelope. It is certainly possible to make that combination work, but I prefer Spin Control, which I'll get to next. Lastly, Bulk Delivery's reduced impact damage makes it generally a bad upgrade to pair with Shaped Charges, although I have seen some players make them work together when paired with many other impact damage upgrades. That being said, I cannot in good conscience recommend these upgrades together because their effects are completely contradictory. Overall, Shaped Charges is a very strong upgrade for impact damage builds, but you should be careful when opting into this upgrade as the complete elimination of explosions means you have no other choice on how to deal damage. On to the next upgrade, we have Spin Control, a breakthrough upgrade which precludes Perforated Envelope. Stacking up to 3 times, Spin Control allows grenades to bounce towards enemies when impacting a wall or another enemy. Each stack increases the bounciness, which is effectively how much speed the grenade maintains when it bounces, with more stacks allowing the grenade to travel further. This is another upgrade that pairs well with an impact damage build, allowing grenades to hit enemies multiple times. It also helps with hitting enemies with direct grenades simply by throwing the grenade at a wall, as the grenade will home in on nearby enemies, making it a more forgiving upgrade to use when focusing on impact damage. Spin Control pairs well with other upgrades that focus on impact damage, especially Shaped Charges. Shaped Charges paired with Spin Controls makes farming skewered Trickshots very easy, especially when used with careful packing as well. As usual, other impact damage upgrades like Flow State and Express Delivery are useful here as well. Spin Control can also be used on explosion damage builds, but Perforated Envelope is generally preferred in that case, as the overall increased damage is more useful than making sure the explosions land near enemies. Overall, Spin Control is a very good upgrade on impact damage builds, and works fine on explosion builds if you haven't picked up Perforated Envelope yet. The last breakthrough upgrade is Top Gear, a defensive upgrade that gives the router a chance to avoid damage proportional to its speed. However, this upgrade completely removes your ability to decelerate, meaning you cannot stop moving. This means if you are not holding movement keys, you will continue moving in the last held direction. With its base maximum movement speed, Router has about a 50% chance to avoid damage, and this number only increases with more movement upgrades. While the downside can be a little annoying, it can be mitigated by quickly moving back and forth if you want to remain in one location. In my opinion, a bigger downside is that when swapping out of a router with Top Gear, that router maintains their dodge chance, which can make getting a quick draw or a close call from your previous host more difficult. However, this upgrade is generally worth the headache, as the increased dodge chance is very useful, although nobody will blame you if you pass on this upgrade just because you find it annoying. That being said, you could argue its use is more limited, as Router already has an invincibility dash that can be used to dodge attacks. Top Gear is best used in conjunction with Self-Preservation Override, as the chance to dodge attacks applies to your own self-inflicted damage. The inability to stop moving is more of an upside. Looking at all of Router's upgrades, there are 2 clear builds that can be spec'd into: impact damage and explosive damage. The impact damage build is very strong and capable of getting lots of fitness with skewered Trickshots, but it requires more higher rarity upgrades with Shape Charges, Spin Control, and Flow State all being higher than common rarity. Comparatively, the explosion damage build is much easier to use and requires less overall upgrades. Both upgrade paths are very strong, and which you choose comes down to either your own preferences or what upgrades the game decides to give you. Router has great strengths, but equally great weaknesses, making it better suited for some Trickshots and worse at others. Due to the charge up on Router's dash, Router's low acceleration, and the delay of grenades explosions, Router is particularly ill-suited to get quick draws against full health enemies. Building up speed to achieve enough impact damage often takes too much time to get a quick draw, and the explosion takes too long to occur to get a quick draw with it as well. Softening enemies up before swapping into a Router is generally the best avenue for getting quick draws. On the other hand, Router is very good at getting standard Trickshots. Directly hitting an enemy with a grenade deals impact damage and stuns them, and the brief period of time before the grenade explodes can be used to swap to a different host. The most difficult part of this Trickshot is actually avoiding killing the enemy with the impact damage, so you'll have to manage your speed depending on the health of the enemy and how much impact damage upgrades you already have. Alternatively, if you have enough impact damage to kill your target, you can just swap during the travel time of the grenade, which obviously has a stricter timing. This will be necessary with Shaped Charges. Moving on, Router has multiple deflection methods, although they are generally more challenging to use than other options. The explosion from grenades can deflect projectiles, but the delay and the relatively small radius means it is difficult to use reliably. Getting deflections from grenade explosions will often happen when fighting lots of enemies, and projectiles incidentally pass over the explosion. Router's second deflection method is slightly more reliable, being the dash's backfire. This can be angled to manually control what direction the deflected bullets travel in. If you aren't holding any movement keys, then the dash is executed in the direction of the cursor, so the deflection will be in the opposite direction of the cursor. This can even be used to deflect your own grenades, allowing you to utilize the impact of the grenade multiple times. Because this is a deflection, kills in this method award the hot potato trickshot. Deflected router grenades always have impact damage, even if they originate from an enemy router, which is why I generally like going for hot potato trickshots against other routers. Additionally, Router's low health should be noted as a benefit for getting close calls. I generally recommend against actively going for close calls, as there are generally better ways to chain multiple trickshot bonuses together. It can be good to keep in mind if you are surrounded by a lot of enemies. In addition to the universal trickshots, Router is capable of getting a few more situational ones. The backfire from Router's dash awards a backfire trickshot if you get a kill with it. Like Steel Toe's melee attack, the backfire has low damage, but it can be used against softened enemies. As such, it can be good to pair with a quick draw to multiply the bonuses together. Rebound trickshots can also be achieved with the grenades. Grenades that have collided with a wall will award a rebound if it kills an enemy. This can be done with the explosion of the grenade, or alternatively with spin control, you can throw grenades directly at a wall and watch them bounce towards enemies to get rebounds. With a few upgrades, new trickshots become available. With self-preservation override, killing enemies by colliding into them awards the body trickshot. While not a huge bonus, especially compared to a similar trickshot that Aphid has access to, it can be very easy to get bodied kills with other upgrades, especially express delivery. Your hosts also maintain their movement after swapping, and for a brief period of time can get bodied kills. This can be used to pair bodied kills with standard trickshots, especially when a fast enemy like a collider is about to rush into you. Think of it like getting a close call, but with much more fitness. With shaped charges, piercing an enemy or object, then killing an enemy with the grenade's impact damage awards a skewered bonus. In large groups of enemies, it can be fairly easy to get this kind of trickshot. With spin control, this becomes much easier as you'll only need to hit one enemy before the projectile bounces to another. Bouncing grenades off walls with these upgrades can award a rebound as well to multiply the bonuses together. There are a lot of fitness benefits when using shape charges and spin control together, which is why I prefer taking spin control over perforated envelope for impact damage builds. On the other hand, explosion damage builds tend to have an easier time getting more standard trickshots. The increased damage and size of the explosion from careful packing makes getting kills with grenade explosions more consistent, but the longer delay before the explosion also gives more time to swap before getting a kill. When paired with bulk delivery and perforated envelope, simply throwing a grenade into a group of enemies, then swapping is an easy way to get several trickshots at once. Additionally, I find perforated envelope and careful packing to combo well for deflecting your own grenades. The longer explosion timer gives you more time to charge up a dash in the correct direction, and perforated envelope allows you to deflect several grenades at once, making the aiming required much more lenient. Lastly, I'd like to discuss Router's strengths for getting cannonball kills. This trickshot is more of a deadlift-focused trickshot, but I'd like to mention it here as I find Router is the best host to make use of it. A cannonball is awarded for killing an enemy while launched by a deadlift's charged punch. As the grenade's impact damage scales with Router's velocity, the increased velocity caused by being launched by a deadlift makes Router particularly well suited for getting this trickshot. It can happen accidentally when grappled by an enemy deadlift, but can also be done on your own. As a deadlift, grapple an enemy Router, then hit it with a charge punch, launching it in the direction of another enemy. Swap into that Router and use the increased momentum to throw a grenade at the other enemy. This should result in a cannonball plus quick draw for 6 times the normal amount of fitness. You do need to be careful with this combo. Firstly, dealing too much damage to the Router, either by juggling too much or using a fully charged punch, will cause the Router to die in the process. Similarly, you'll need to be careful not to collide with any enemies while getting launched, as this will cause you to take massive damage. Overall, cannonballs are a high-risk, high-reward trickshot option available when using deadlift and Router in conjunction with each other. Now I'll show you one of my Router runs through level 1. I'll try to explain my thought process so you can get a feel for Router in action. Beginning in transmission, I find that it's a little trickier to start with Router compared to the other bots. Not just because you need to build up speed, but it's also hard to keep your distance in such a small room. Decided to go for backfire kills here, but nothing too fancy other than that. Only common upgrades to start, but that's alright. I went with Predictive Suspension. Now in Coolant, I rushed forward a little too far, managed to get the backfire before dying to the deadlift. This level is very claustrophobic, so Router struggles a little more in my experience. Voltage Ramp Bypass is my next upgrade. Nice to have with the acceleration upgrade I got before, and will help improve my impact damage overall. I haven't been playing in a very stylish manner so far, so I decided to swap into a deadlift to see if I can get a cannonball kill. And I do! Cannonball plus quick draw for 300 fitness. Of course, the streak ends there. I should have swapped out before dying, but actually, I accidentally got a trick shot because my previous host died, so it all worked out in the end. Unfortunately, no more routers here for the rest of the floor. On to the next upgrade. I get Self-Preservation Override, one of my favorites. I already have a movement speed upgrade, so I am definitely taking that. Hopefully I can use it to get some more fitness. Of course, against other routers, it can be difficult to actually collide with them, since they can move very erratically. Instead, I managed to accidentally get a hot potato kill by deflecting that router's grenade with my grenade's explosion. In this room, my swapping could have been a bit better. Could have gotten a close call again if I had swapped in time. That tends to happen fairly often as router. In this room, colliding with a charging collider can be quite dangerous, so I opt to stun it in place with a grenade, and then ram into it for the kill. I actually managed to get a rebound trick shot there. I think my grenade just barely clipped the wall before exploding. In a smaller room like this, it's a little easier to get body kills against other routers. They tend to move a little more predictably. And there you can see a nice aspect of SPO. Even if your router dies, it keeps the hitbox for a short time, allowing you to get body trick shots against enemies that run into your old corpse. It's especially effective against colliders attempting to tackle you. No routers in that first encounter. Here I probably should have gone for a cannonball instead of just immediately swapping. I definitely had the swap juice for it. This is another stage with long, narrow hallways, but unlike Coolant, you have much more room to utilize to stay away from enemies. Not unlike what I recommended during my Steel Toe guide. That body kill there was maybe a little risky, since both routers would have SPO, since it maintains the upgrades you have briefly after swapping out. In the next encounter, you can see I go for a standard trick shot by comboing the impact of the grenade with the explosion. I figured it was a good time to swap to get my variety bonus back. And that Steel Toe walked right into those flames. Well done. Bulk delivery is here, but since I have more of an impact damage build at the moment, I'd rather pass on it for now. I did consider it, but without careful packing, it just isn't too much of a benefit right now. This is another room where it can be incredibly useful to create some space for yourself, then pick enemies off as they approach you. At this point, the collision damage is quite high and can reliably kill most enemies. That being said, be sure not to ram into heated aphids, as you can still take the pansear damage like I did there. But all is well because Shaped Charges is here. I'm very glad I skipped bulk delivery before now. No router upgrades for sale. Fortunately, SPO benefits a lot from common upgrades, so I can just spend all my fitness on those. 4 stacks of Voltage Ramp Bypass with 2 stacks of Predictive Suspension and Express Delivery. These will help improve shape charges too, of course. In this room, it can be a little risky to go too far around the corner, so I elect to stay back for a while and try to snipe any enemies that follow me. Now that more enemies have appeared, getting skewered kills is a little easier. This extra upgrade is definitely worth it, especially because all the enemies line themselves up perfectly to get some skewered kills. This room as well is very good with shape charges, skewered kills for days here. Now, I'll be honest, don't ask me how I got that. I think it counted as a trick shot because the router still counted as my previous host, and it was this SPO damage that killed rather than the deadlift launch. One of the main downsides with having this much speed as router is it can get quite unwieldy, case in point. Fortunately, that aphid decided to throw me a bone and run directly into a Tesla coil. Great job. I'd also like to point out that in a single floor, I managed to get about 5,000 fitness, not including what I spent on upgrades. Once you get a solid build, the fitness can really start rolling in. Furnace is definitely a very scary room for router. With this much speed, it's very easy to accidentally run into fire. Managed to get a clothesline kill before, as the deadlift was kind enough to throw an enemy into me, resulting in a ton of SPO damage. This is another room where you can really make use of shape charges, piercing projectile. Could have been a little more careful, but I managed to get a body trick shot in the process. After that, I just wanted to avoid any unnecessary damage. Aphids tend to perform the best in Furnace, so I figured I should probably swap into one while refilling some of my local juice. There again, you have to be careful when using router in this room. Honestly, I probably should have stayed as an aphid. Unsecured cargo is here, although I decided to take careful packing. In retrospect, I think unsecured cargo would have been a little better, as only one stack of careful packing isn't that helpful. The last normal room is exfiltration, another more claustrophobic stage. Although with SPO and more damage upgrades, I shouldn't have too much trouble, no harm in swapping to other hosts occasionally too. You can see here with shape charges and all these speed upgrades, getting quick draws as router is much more feasible. Messed up a little there and didn't swap out in time either. Second half of this stage is much more open, which I used to my advantage to create distance from all the enemies. And peak router gameplay is, of course, missing half a dozen grenades in a row. Unfortunately, didn't have enough speed there, and I missed the grenade throw. Here, I wanted to go for another cannonball, but the Tachi actually deflected my grenade with their sword. Very rude. No router upgrades, but that's alright. We have plenty of fitness heading into the next shop. Speaking of which, unsecured cargo is back with careful packing, although I can take both of them now. 2 more common upgrades also go into careful packing. This is actually a pretty neat combo, since the grenades that are dropped will maintain the standard benefits of careful packing. Onto the CPU, if you watched my steel toe guide, you may remember that I entered this room as a router there. Here I am doing significantly more damage with just the basic grenade throw. However, I'm also taking some pretty heavy damage from SPO as well. I managed to somehow not use my dash to dodge the CPUs later, not sure what happened there. Fortunately, there are already some routers for me to use. This attack can be a little awkward with SPO. You can see me trying to outrun the CPU when I can. With this much speed, it's quite easy to dodge the final hammer attack. And no unique trick shot there, probably should have gone for a body kill, but oh well. And with that, you've reached the end of the guide. You are now a certified router rammer. I hope this video has taught you something new or useful for your RAM runs, and as always, I would appreciate any feedback in the comments. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.